Welcome to Let's Get Writing. I'm your host, Kathryn Taylor, and this is a show all about writing and how authors create books and how they get to market and what inspires people who write. Why do they do that crazy thing that they do? I hope you enjoy it. And every show, I bring you a new guest, a new author to learn more about. My guest today is an award-winning emerging author from Mount Pearl, Newfoundland, and Labrador. She's been a prolific writer since childhood, and many writers often are like that. Her first publication came in 2015 when her short story, Lifelike, was published by Nelson Education. And she's been a top seller in the Atlantic provinces for the past 4 months, and we'll find out about October, maybe even 5 months, with Atlantic Books Today, and they reflect sales in Chapters Indigo and other stores as well, I believe. And even more, my guest is only 23 years old, and let's welcome her to the show, Emily Hepditch. Welcome to Let's Get Writing. Come on down.
Hello.
Hi. How are you today?
I am fabulous. How are you?
Not too bad. We've got beautiful sunshine here on the center of the island, and you're out east. So how's it out there?
The sun is shining. It's threatening to be a little overcast, but right now we have some sun. So
Well, you know what? That's what I like to talk about because the center of the island is the so-called hotspot of Newfoundland. And I'm going to gloat a little bit.
oh yeah.
Can't help it. You know how we are about the weather here in Newfoundland. We all talk about it because
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, because
Yeah.
anyway, let's talk about something else today. Emily, you're a really busy young woman, and I'm just looking so forward to hearing about what keeps you busy. But before we do that, the first thing I want to ask you is how does it feel to have so much success with your first book, The Woman in the Attic? I actually have a copy here by my side. Very beautiful. Yeah.
It feels amazing. From the time I was a little small child, that's all I ever wanted to do was write books for a living. So to wake up every morning and know that there's people reading some book that I wrote it's unbelievable. I've said from the beginning, it's so overwhelming in a way because, something that was only in my head at one point is now on shelves in stores. So that's really overwhelming, but I mean, it's a dream come true, and I'm just so grateful for this opportunity and to be able to do this after dreaming about it for so long.
Well, there's many who've dreamed about it for much, much longer. So I think you're most fortunate to have accomplished this. But of course, to do something like you've done just doesn't just happen overnight. It's always a lot of work to write a book, produce a book, and learn the process. So absolutely, we we know it didn't happen easily. We know there was a process behind it. And for people who don't know, you have a Bachelor of Arts from Memorial University, where you graduated in 2019, and you studied linguistics,
Yeah.
psychology, and criminology. And you're writing psychological thrillers. So come on, was this like a grand plan, or just how did that all happen?
So I went to university originally because I was thinking about doing speech language pathology. But as I advanced in my studies, I was just so interested in people and in minds and in the way that people relate to one another. I've been writing literally forever, but I guess when I started university, I really took an interest in psychological thrillers just because, again, I was so interested in the way people behave and the way they relate to one another. And I just had so much fun writing them that I kind of couldn't stop once I got into that area of writing. So it kind of wasn't a master plan as it was. I just stumbled upon something that was so much fun and something that I love to do. So it kind of worked well that way.
And when you say fun, we're talking psychological thrillers. So the fun part for you must be getting into the minds of your characters and, anticipating what you want them to do or how they're going to interact. Like, how closely do you identify with your characters?
I would say that I think that all fiction is grounded in a little reality. I would hope to think that I'm not like some of my characters. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I would hope that I'm not like most of them. But um, I would say I find it very interesting to kind of, in a way, react to some crazy situation through the lens of my character. So that's kind of my favorite part, and that's kind of how I relate the most. I kind of draw upon what would I do if, my mother started acting in this bizarre way, such as Hannah in The Woman in the Attic. So yeah, probably I get to play. I kind of get to pretend I'm that character for a little while, and that's how I
For a
relate to
little while. Yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. I don't think if you're writing psychological thrillers, you actually want to become that character, but you get to play, act, or take on that
Yeah.
role and how they would think. And I would suspect that what you've studied would be so helpful in that way, to
Yeah.
give you that depth to just go inside.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely helpful. And just learning about just coming to accept that everybody kind of relates to things and reacts to things differently. And so that there are really no rules, especially in the world of fiction, but also in real life. So, yeah, it was
Mhm.
definitely a useful
True.
trope.
True enough. What one thing you've played with very well in your book is isolation. We have the isolated set or location in that house and wind, and you also have the isolation of your main character and what she's dealing with in this house with two women. And we don't want to give anything away, but um, you know how I guess I just want to say, like, how much of that set and those ideas and placing it in Newfoundland, just talk a little bit about why you chose to set it that way.
So I read a lot of fiction of this genre, and one of the things that I was noticing is kind of how general the settings within the thrillers typically are. So I was reading a lot of fiction set in different cities in England, Ireland, kind of anywhere in the world, and I thought, with a landscape as rugged as Newfoundland and an isolated kind of like an isolated community like we have here, why has no one thought about setting a thriller here? Because realistically, it is somewhere where you can obtain complete isolation if that's what you're looking for. And so I was on a road trip one evening or one afternoon, and I was driving through a small community, and I just saw this little saltbox house on a cliff, and I was like, man, that would be a good place to set a mystery, because you're not living there completely estranged from everyone around you unless you have a secret. And it was kind of a mix of that, and then also wanting to kind of honor the place where I'm from within my fiction in kind of a new way. So that's kind of what inspired setting it in Newfoundland.
And I do agree. It's strange that we don't have more stories of that nature coming from the island, because we do offer so many places where you can isolate, and we do offer that stark landscape that's not always connected. There are places where you just don't get cell phone coverage here still. And yeah, people who come to visit sometimes are often pleasantly surprised. I say pleasantly because why not on hook for a while? Um, yeah, and just the sense of being surrounded by ocean as well, and gives us again another sense of isolation. Really, you're only getting off of here on a plane or a boat. That's it.
100%.
Yeah, unless put on a set of wings and you're here
Or you're a
once
really
you get
good
here.
swimmer.
Very good swimmer. No thanks. Not with those cold waters.
Nope.
Um, but it is great that you did it, and I'm sure that a lot of authors that we see coming out of Newfoundland now are taking advantage of our culture in many ways to create books here. And it's wonderful because it's a great way to even further advertise the beauty and the starkness and stunning beauty and nature
Yeah.
that we have here. Yeah.
100%.
Now, did you use any of that isolation to accomplish what I'm now going to say? That you wrote your book in, I think it was 7 or 8 days?
Yeah, it was 8.5 technically. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I definitely didn't. I went out of town to do that. I had to.
Mhm.
So what happened was I was at the end of my degree, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do next. I hadn't specifically decided on grad school, and I had 2 weeks at the end of the summer when my job was finished before I went back to school. And I said, you know what? I'm going to commit to something, going back to my roots. I'm going to write something substantial, and I'm going to go for it full force because that's all I've ever wanted to do. So I'm going to make it happen. So I realized I only had 2 weeks. And if I was going to write a book and not be distracted or not be discouraged, I was going to have to do it quickly. So my boyfriend actually works in Gander, and he worked all summer in the weather office there. So for the last 2 weeks of August, I joined him in Gander, and I just went to the library or a coffee shop every day, and I worked my butt off to try and get something accomplished. And I had 10 days where I could write kind of undisturbed, where he would be at work, I would be left to my own devices. And by the middle of the 8th day, I was done. So it was kind of crazy, but it was such a cool experience.
I imagine. And I can just imagine what it would have been like to do that. And when you came out with a book, what form was it in? I mean, was it an outline, or how close did you feel you were to a finished product?
It was a completely finished book. It was my goal was 80,000 words, and I finished at 81, I think. It obviously needed some editing, naturally.
That's where I'm digging.
Yeah, for a lot of it, I wasn't even conscious. But no, it was a complete, like, readable book. Nothing was left out. It was completed. I actually ended up cutting some of it out at the end of the process, but it was. I went in with nothing other than like a notes list and an outline, a very like skeletal outline of just scene by scene. But I came out with an actual finished product, which was not what I ever expected would happen.
Well, you got to try things, and that was something I wanted to ask you. So, you went with an outline. Did you outline by chapter, or did you just have a general? This is where she goes. She's here. Or this character will come in. You know, how detailed an outline did you work from?
um, it was very so it was detailed in a mechanical sense, so I knew how I was going to get to point A, B, C, D. But a lot of, like, there was nothing that actually went into the final draft written in that outline. So I knew, for example, in scene one, she was driving to her mother's home. I knew that she had to get from her apartment to her mother's home, but I left that up to the writing process. So I didn't go into that much detail. Again, conversations that would happen between the characters, I would vaguely write down like what they had to talk about, but then in the writing, I would just kind of let it happen. So it was detailed in terms of plot, but the substance itself, I kind of left up to my own.
And your characters to help you.
Yeah, exactly. Because there still had to be some fun involved to get through that.
And when you say, and two thoughts I have here, did you have the ending decided when you sat down to write?
Yes. Yeah.
You did. Okay. You
Yeah,
knew where
I knew
you
what
were
was going to
going.
happen.
Yeah. It's good to have a destination. I think that does help a lot. And the other thought I was having was with the dialogues and characters, though, sometimes you can have things in mind. Do you find when you're writing and sometimes it just doesn't, it changes the characters as they evolve, almost tell you what they want to say.
All the time. I always tell people, like, when I'm especially dialogue and especially like a, a particular scene where two people are interacting, most of the times it's different as a result than what I went into in planning. I always say that, like, it's not even almost a conscious process when I'm writing dialogue or I'm writing, again, an interaction, because I'm kind of just like listening to what's happening in my head, and I'm kind of just writing down what's coming out from the character. So yeah, definitely things change all the time, and you kind of have to be open to that, because ultimately the people in your head are going to decide what's going to happen.
There we go. It's amazing. So as writers, there are always people in our head talking to us, and yeah.
Yeah.
And they are. So you've loved books and writing since you were a child. And what were your first memories of that, and how did that influence you?
I mean, I remember being really small and going to the library with my mom and just sitting in the aisle and looking at the pictures and smelling the pages and just the warm memories that come with like just reading a new book that I hadn't seen before. Um, I loved Nancy Drew books from the time I was about grade 2 or grade 3. And I mean, anytime I got allowance money, I was in the used bookstore trying to find a Nancy Drew that I hadn't read before. Um, so lots of fond memories of reading for sure.
Funny you'd mentioned Nancy Drew, and I mean, there's a big difference in our ages, but I went through the same series, all the Nancy Drew books, and then I went through the Hardy Boys as
Oh yeah.
well. Yeah, and I find that if I find a series that I like, such as, for example, Sue Grafton, she did the Alphabet Mysteries with Kinsey Milhone, that you just keep going. You might like, have you seen those ones?
I think I've heard of them actually.
Yeah, her character is quite a flawed person, but she's great. And but there is that thing of getting into a series and being able to continue to spend time with someone that you enjoy, and that's what characters become.
100%.
Not all of them, though. Not all of them in
Not
your
all of
book.
them, yeah. But we need a break from some of them after a while.
You like to read about them, but you wouldn't want to spend too much time with some of them, given their motivations. So
Absolutely.
let's talk a little bit again about the book, the title, which is The Woman in the Attic, which says a lot.
Yeah.
Right away, you know what kind of book it's going to be. So what kind of thought process went into that for you, and why did you pick it?
So normally the title is like my nemesis. Like I cannot think of what to call a book. But The Woman in the Attic, I knew it going in. I knew I needed to feature the attic, because of course that is where the most important thing happens. And I also knew that I said with the general trend of commercial thrillers, typically words like girl, woman, you can kind of, without knowing too much about the book, you can kind of suspect that it's a thriller. So I said The Woman in the Attic, which is a little literal, but then also it kind of gives away what type of book it's going to be. At least I hoped so. So that's kind of what was my thought process there.
Yeah, and the cover. Let's talk a little bit about that, because the combination of the title and the cover really do give you that kind of a little chill runs up your spine.
Well, I'm glad. That's the effect we hoped we'd have.
Well, you did. But the image of the house, did you come up with that? Did you have a concept for that, or was that the role of your publisher?
Well, I had a concept, so I made a cover that looked a lot like that one when I was writing the book to motivate myself. I was like, I need to have something to look at to visualize this finished product. So I kind of sent the idea that I had, and my publisher's amazing graphic designer came back with the final cover, which I was just stoked about because it is so beautiful. And it's actually a real home in Newfoundland. It's in
Hold it up
Trinity,
there again. Yeah, so people can see it.
and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful property.
And it does look like a lot of what we see in Newfoundland if you go out around the bay. These houses that look like this are quite common.
For sure.
Hmm. So you said you use that as a motivational tool. Any other motivational tools we should know about while you were going through those heavy duty 8.5 days?
I've always kind of done this, but I find this is so helpful. I watch like trailers for movies. Because I don't know, it gets me so excited to write something because it's like the most exciting moment of the movie all compiled into one 3-minute clip. So I do that when I'm feeling a little uninspired. I listen to music when I'm writing, whether it's like just a pump up song or instrumental. And definitely reading a lot. I find the more I read, especially if I'm reading a really good book, the more I want to write. I used to find it difficult to read because if I was enjoying anything, I would want to go write on my own. Um, but yeah, a combination of all of those techniques kind of do it for me. And
Yeah,
coffee.
interesting, because I think all writers have certain things that they like to do. I love your idea of the trailers because if you see visually at all, which I tend to see that way, those kind of things inspire you, and they're well put together. And of course, music, fantastic. I think many writers do work with music, and there are a few who don't. I'm thinking Stephen King maybe doesn't. I don't know. I think I read that in his book, but I could be wrong. Okay, so now we've got you. You've written it. You've gotten your draft, and you're pumped, and it's summer and everything. Tell me about finding a publisher and how you went about all of that.
So, I found a publisher in a very unique way. I am a member of the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland. They're an amazing organization for writers in the province, and they have so many incredible events to partake in. But they had an event last year for their annual general meeting called Pitch to Publishers. And essentially, it was a big formal or big informal social event where the local publishers in the province all came together, formed a panel, and then 10 authors with books or concepts got up in front of the room and pitched their book in 2 minutes. So it was kind of a coincidence that that came to be so quick, so soon after I had written the book. But I kind of swallowed my fear and applied, and I got up in front of the room and I just gave a 2 minute speech about why they should publish my book. And that was how I met my publisher, and it was just it was a great relationship from the start. They were super supportive, super professional, and I knew it was going to be a good match. So that's
Wow. You do hear a lot about these pitch contests now, and there are even workshops you can take to perfect a pitch. I know that NLO in Newfoundland, the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs, they've often offered pitch workshops. And it's a big thing these days. You get a pitch opportunity, you want to just go in there. Bravo to you for doing it and for changing the outcome. Look what you're doing now. You're published and you're doing extremely well with it. So very exciting.
It was very exciting, for sure.
So do you have anything favorite in the book that you really like, or a particular part of the book? Not giving anything away, but do you ever find that kind of thing with your own writing?
It's kind of funny because after I write something and I get to the last stage of it, I kind of lose my nerve, and then I don't want to read it anymore because I don't want to see something that I changed my mind on or I don't like. But with The Woman in the Attic, of course, I'm very proud of it, and I love it so much. But I especially love the scene where, and then this isn't too much of a spoiler, Hannah finds the attic. I had so much fun writing that. And I just there so in my house currently there's an attic door in my bedroom, and of course mine only leads to the roof, but we've never been up in the attic. So as a little girl I was terrified of it, and I would like sleep facing away from the attic door so I wouldn't have to look at it. But writing that scene was kind of cathartic because I was like, okay, well finally I get to indulge my fantasies about what this attic was. So that's probably my favorite part.
Yeah, a lot of old houses had those kind of attics. And you're right, you didn't go up. And sometimes, on a windy night, you might wonder, what was that noise?
Exactly. And my attic door bangs when the wind blows. So so I was like, that was pretty close to home.
I think someone was working on you right from the start that you were supposed to go into this
Yep,
type of genre. Absolutely.
I think so.
So, yeah, I don't think you had a choice in this. You were predestined. Now, you're currently touring around the province, and how much of this is part of your life, the promoting the book and the things that you do? Let's talk about that.
So of course, because of the coronavirus and everything going on in the world, we haven't been able to do a whole lot of interacting with the public, which has been kind of a bummer. But I've gotten to do a couple of socially distant meetings with people, and I've gotten to do one signing already. But the promotion is a huge part of the process. I mean, I'm checking my Facebook once a day at least. I'm checking Instagram once a day at least to see if anybody's posted about it. Reach out, answer emails. I'm participating in book clubs a lot of the time virtually, of course, and trying just to reach out to my readers as much as I can given the circumstances. So it's definitely a big part of the job, but I just love it so much, and getting to connect with people and thank them for reading the story is, of course, I mean, the least I can do. So I love that part of it.
And you know, much of writing is in isolation, so that connecting with the reader is a big part, is a
For
big,
sure.
big part of the reward. It's almost like the if an actor performs in a play at the end, the audience applauds. Well, writers need love too. They're not immediately in front of their audience. So those connections and social media has been so great in bringing that world and making it so available to people who don't, who aren't out in front when they're doing their job, which is writing. So I think that you've really hit on something, using social media in that way to connect and get closer to the people who are reading your book. It's wonderful. And I have your Facebook address up here, but I think with your name, most people will be able to find you on
Yeah.
Facebook or Instagram.
Yes. Not many.
Absolutely. So I want to say we're just about ready to wrap up. What's in the future for you? What are you planning?
I'm working on some new projects. I'm always working on one or two at least at a time. Um, I am hopefully set to release a new thriller in the spring. It's called Alone on the Trail. It's a little ways away yet, but I'm having a lot of fun writing it. It's indulging my love for hiking and writing and smashing them together. So that will be coming in the spring uh, through Flanker Press, of course. And then there are some others in the works that I'm not going to talk about yet, just because just because they're very very early. But I'm working on a bunch of stuff right now. Some novels,
Yeah,
short stories. We'll see.
we'll see. But Alone on the Trail, okay. We already know where that's going with that name. And is that also set in Newfoundland?
That is set in Newfoundland. Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
got the trails here. I noted that you did like to hike and so on, and what a great province we have for that type
Oh,
of
it's beautiful.
activity.
Yep.
It's
For sure.
it's amazing. And also, Emily, you said that sometimes I just want to go back to this point because it's something I think that a lot of writers feel, and maybe people who are reading the books don't realize is that sometimes it's very difficult to read your own work and almost a sense of is it good enough and
Yeah.
being self-conscious about what you wrote. So I'm glad you mentioned that so that we all know you're human.
Yeah.
You write a book in 8.5 days, a good outline of a book. So we want to know that it's just as tough at times to
Oh,
sit with your own work as it is for anyone.
100%.
Yeah,
We're all our
great.
own our worst critics. So
We are, sadly. But hey, there's Enlo out there. So Enlo, I'm sorry, Wannell, we're out there to support,
yes.
and many organizations in the island. So thank you so much for taking time to share some thoughts with us and to let us know what you're doing. And I want to wish you all the best with your future projects, and hopefully you'll be back on again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. So
Yeah,
let's keep writing.
absolutely. You as well.
Thank you. Have a great day, Emily.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.